Thakur Vidya Mandir High School and Junior College welcomes all the 12th standard computer science students. Today, from Unit 3, we are going to learn the block diagram of 8086. So, already we have understood the features of 8086, the advanced stages of x86 family, as well as we have differentiated 8085 and 8086 in our last class. So, let us understand what is the block diagram of 8086 microprocessor. So this is the block diagram of 8086 microprocessor. The entire block diagram is divided into two parts. You can see I have drawn a line in between. One will be the BIU and second will be the EU. EU have separate set of operation with it and BIU will be performing a separate set of operations. So what are the operations and how here each and every blocks are connected? Let us understand. First, the block diagram of 8086 microprocessor is divided, that is the CPU is divided into two independent function parts. One will be the BIU, which is the bus interface unit, and second will be the execution unit. Bus interface unit and the execution unit. We know what is the primary function of the processor in 8085. It is the fetch, decode and execute. So this function is being shared between these two units. The bus interface unit will be fetching the data, it will be decoding the data. And the execution unit, from the name itself, signifies it is going to execute. And secondly, it will help the bus interface unit to decode. So again, I am saying the primary function is fetch, decode and execute. First thing, fetching will be done by bus interface unit and decoding will be done by the bus interface unit. Execution unit will help the bus interface unit to decode and it will execute it. The BIU, that is the bus interface unit, contains the queue, segment registers and instruction pointer. And execution unit contains the flag register, general purpose register, stack pointer and other pointers and registers and index registers. Bus interface unit. So as we have studied, the bus interface unit sends the address, fetches instructions from memory, reads data from memory and writes data to the memory. That is, my bus interface unit is just going to fetch and decode. So bus interface unit will be sending the address. It will fetch the instruction from the memory, reads the data from the memory, writes the data to the memory and it will keep ready for the execution unit to execute. So it is going to do the process prior so that the execution unit can perform the operation on time, due to which the speed of the processor will be increased. BIU handles transfer of data and address on bus for the from execution unit. So it also going to handle the transfer of data and address on the bus from execution unit. It consists of the following parts. So what are the following parts? It has the instruction queue, segment registers and instruction pointer. So let us understand the significance of each and every parts in detail. So this is the bus interface unit. So firstly, we have here the instruction queue. So what is an instruction queue? In order to speed up the execution, 6 instructions will be prefetched, it will be decoded and kept ready for the execution unit. This type of that is the instruction queue. This type of architecture is called as the pipelined architecture. When I was teaching you the features of x86 family, that time I said it supports pipelined architecture. So this is called as a pipelined architecture. That is, in order to speed up the execution, some set of instruction, that is in 8086, 6 instructions are prefetched and it will be decoded and kept ready for the execution unit in a FIFO register called as instruction queue. So what is a FIFO register? That is first in, first out, which is first that is fetched and decoded will be first executed. Now the interesting part is, when this 6 instructions is executed by the execution unit, the next 6 set of instructions will be kept ready in the instruction queue. When that 6 has been executed, that is the second 6, the third 6 will be kept ready, due to which the processing speed will be more. So instruction queue. Speed up the execution of program, bus interface unit fetches 6 instruction bytes ahead of time from memory and stores them for the execution unit in the FIFO register called as instruction queue. So what does FIFO stands for? First in, first out. Now here, this type of architecture is called as the pipelined architecture, and it differs from processor to processor. In 8086, I am using only a 6 instruction. In Pentium, if I am going through now, it supports the dual pipeline technology. That will be different. Now next comes the segment registers. So we have here 4 segments: ES, CS, DS and SS. Now what are the segment register and its significance? Now what was the need for segmentation? Segmentation is the process in which the main memory of the computer is logically divided into separate segments, and each segment has its own base address. Why we are dividing it into segments? To enhance the processing speed, or we can say to enhance the execution time of the processor, we are going to divide it into segmentation. So here each and every segment has its own purpose. We have ES, extra segment; CS, code segment; DS, data segment; SS, stack segment. So first let us understand what is a code segment. The code segment is used to store the instructions that are required for execution. So the code segment is used to store the instruction that is required for execution. The data segments, as the name itself signifies, it points to the data segment of the memory where the data is being stored. So we are going to use the data segments for storing up the data. Now, the stack segment. What is the function of the stack segment? It is used for to store the stack data. That is, whenever we are going to store the data temporarily in the stack, at that time we are going to use up the stack segment. So any operation later to the stack pointer will be always in the stack segment. Extra segment. It also refers to a segment in the memory which is another data segment in the memory, that is, it is used for storing the extra information. Now a simple thing, we know that the microprocessor is going to access 1 MB of memory, right? But the 4 segments will be occupying only till 64 KB of memory, and as I said, each and every segment has its own significance. So simple thing, why I am segmenting? In order to enhance the execution speed of the processor. And here this 4 segments, all the 4 segments are 16-bit segment register. BIU contains the following 16-bit segment registers: extra segment, code segment, stack segment and data segment. These 16-bit registers are used to store the 16-bit address of the memory segment. So we know within 64 KB of memory, it is bifurcated into 4 parts: extra segment, code segment, stack segment and data segment. The two main segment which is a need for the execution part of the program is two things, that is the code segment and the data segment. Next comes the IP, which is nothing the instruction pointer. Now, instruction pointer, a simple function, if I say now, the instruction pointer is similar to my program counter. We know the program counter is 16-bit. It helps the microprocessor to execute the program in a sequence way, right? The same function will be done by the instruction pointer. So we know the program or the instruction is always present in the code segment. So the instruction pointer will be always pointing the 16-bit address of the code segment. And once the instruction is being fetched and decoded and executed, automatically it will get incremented by 1. In simple words, the instruction pointer is similar to your program counter. The code segment holds the 16-bit starting address of the segment from which the BIU is fetching instruction code bytes. The IP register, that is the instruction pointer register, holds the 16-bit address of the next code byte within the code segment. Why in the code segment? As I said, the instructions is always available in the code segment for execution. So these are the 3 main parts of the BIU, that is the bus interface unit. So we have learnt with the segment register, instruction pointer and the instruction queue. All these 3 plays a very important role, and there are few more lines that are connected, which is nothing but the control bus. Now let us understand the execution unit. Now execution unit, as we know, the execution unit will be executing and it will be helping the BIU to decode. So execution unit. Execution unit of 8086 tells BIU where to fetch instructions or data, decodes the instructions and executes them. So the fetching and the decoding in the BIU is done with the help of the execution unit. The following section describes the functional part of the execution unit. We have the general purpose register, the flag register and the stack pointer. Though these three are the main segment of the execution unit. So firstly, we have the general purpose register. Now, here the general purpose register, along with the general purpose register, we also have the pointer register and index register. There are basically four general purpose register: AHAL, BHBL, CHCL, and DH and DF. These are the main general purpose register, which is of 16-bit. These registers can be also used to perform 8-bit operation when I'm using it individually, like AL. AL becomes the lower order register and AH becomes the higher order. Similarly, it goes with BL, CL and DL, which are the lower order register, whereas BH, CH and DH all becomes the higher order register. So whenever we are working with the register, we can use it for performing 8-bit as well as 16-bit for operation. Then we have here the pointer register, which are our stack pointer and the base pointer register. There are two index register, one is SI and DI. So these are the main general purpose register in our 8080 general purpose register. 8086 has 8 general purpose register. They are AHAL, BHBL, CHCL, DH and DL, which is of 8-bit. These registers can be used individually for temporary storage. These registers can be paired to form 16-bit register, that is AX, BX, CX and DX. Stack pointer and base pointer are the pointer registers, and SI and DI, that is source index and destination index, are index registers which are used for string function. That is whenever we are performing a group of data, that time we will be using source index and the destination index. Now let's understand the function of, I'm just giving an introduction of the registers. The first AX, BX, CX and DX register. Now AX. AX is nothing, from the name itself signifies it is the accumulator. So whatever function the accumulator is doing, the same function AX will be doing. That is, it performs arithmetic and logic operation. One number should be stored. After the operation, the result is true. Next comes the BX. BX register will be just acting like a memory pointer, just like my HL register pair. We know the HL register pair is indirectly called as the memory pointer. The same function will be of the BX, that is the base register. CX, count register. So whenever we are going to store the counter, that is if I'm going to transfer 10 data or if I'm going to sort 10 data in ascending order, at that time we are going to set a counter, right? So the counter will be in the CX register. Now the DX register. DX register is a very special register because we know the accessing capacity, that is my limitation, the capacity of 8086 is just 16-bit, right? So if I'm going to do 16 into 16-bit multiplication, you will get the data more than 16-bit. So the first 16-bit will be stored in the accumulator. The extra 16-bit will be always stored in the DX register. The similar thing happens when I'm going to divide 32 divided by 16. So we know here the processor can store only 16-bit data. So AX, the first 16-bit will be stored. The next 16-bit will be stored in the DX register and then we are going to divide it by 16. So this is the function of the data segment. Next comes the flags. So we know whenever we are going to perform the arithmetic and logical operation. So you can see here we also have the ALU, which is going to be 16-bit. Already the functions of ALU we have elaborated in 8085. The similar function this ALU will be performing. flag register. The flag register is 16-bit, but we are only going to use here the 9 active flags. We are only going to use here the 9 active flags. And here the flags are further divided into control flags as well as status flags. We know after the arithmetic and the logical operation, the status of the answer will be always present in the flag register. 8086 microprocessor has 16-bit flag register with 9 active flags. 9 active flags are further divided as control and the status flag. Along with that, we also have the stack pointer, which was a part of the general purpose register. So we know stack pointer, it is going to be 16-bit. We have already learned this in the concept of interrupt, how it is going to play an important role. It is used to store the data temporarily for execution whenever there is an interrupt occurs. It is just like a bookmark register as we have discussed. Now stack pointer is always used to store the 16-bit address, and it will be pointing the 16-bit address of the stack segment. As I said, whatever operation is related to the stack pointer will be taking place in the stack segment. 8086 allow us to set 64 KB of memory as stack. The 16-bit starting address of the stack is stored in the stack pointer. So it is a read-write memory which is used for storing a large amount of data. So this is the entire block diagram of 8086. We can also call it as the internal architecture of 8086. So here we have learned about the bus interface unit and the execution unit. Along with that, the lines here are present, which are nothing but our system bus, which is used for transferring the data from one place to another. So by this, we complete the block diagram of 8086. Thank you.